Hello, dear friends. Life is a mystery, no matter how hard we try to rationalize it. Opinion piece: control or trust? Mystery of life. Don't force life. Love is dangerous. Surrender and trust. Yield control to God. Poetry from the heart. Life is poetry, not prose. It's a song, not a sermon. Surrender to Providence. The river flows on its own. Sufis dance and don't dogmatize. Entrusting to divine providence. Surrender of the child to his mother. Let's start. There are people who practice creative visualization with great effort to achieve things, and it doesn't work because the desire of their soul doesn't always coincide with the will of its immortal divine essence, which always gives us what is good for our spiritual evolution, not what would harm us. One can wish to be a millionaire, but if the spirit considers that this would harm us, it wouldn't grant such a wish. But there are people who cheat by making a pact with regressive entities, and that is too expensive. This is one of the most poorly understood topics in spiritual traditions. The body wants one thing, the mind wants something else, the soul wants something else, and your divine essence wants something different sometimes. Submitting to the desire of the body is the path of lead. Submitting to the desire of the mind is the path of iron. Submitting to the desire of the soul is the path of silver. And surrendering to the will of the spirit is the path of gold. There are many who preach soul control to obtain superpowers and great worldly achievements, such as being rich, famous, and or having power and influence. And it is not wrong in principle because we all deserve the best in life. But the great mystics of all traditions have not preached the silver of path of control, but the golden path of surrendering to the will of the spirit, or abandoning oneself to the will of Allah in the case of the Sufi mystics. Flow only. The, fra- the phrase, don't push the river because it flows on its own, refers to the attitude of acceptance and trust in the natural flow of life. It invites an attitude of surrender, trust, and acceptance of the present moment, letting things happen at their natural pace without forcing or manipulating events. It is an invitation to let go of control and flow with life, instead of fighting against it. It has a meaning similar to the concept of abandonment to divine will or tawakkul in the Sufi tradition. It consists of accepting the present moment and the circumstances as they are, without fighting against them, trusting that things will happen in their own time, without forcing them, letting life follow its natural course, like a river that flows without the need for push it. Surrender to the higher power of the universe and its will, instead of imposing your own, and let go of control and flow with the flow of events, instead of resisting them. Sufism. You may have never heard of Sufism, and may be a Sufi without knowing it. Krishna was a Sufi, and so was Christ. Mahavira was a Sufi, and so was Buddha, and they never heard of that word, and they never knew that there is such a thing as Sufism. Osho said. He adds that Christianity no longer has Sufism because the church killed it with its dogmas. Sufism does not need popes, priests, or dogmas. It is not from the head, belongs to the heart. The heart is the true church, not an organized institution, because all organization is of the mind. And once the mind takes over, the heart simply has to live that house completely. The house becomes too narrow for the hut. The hut needs all the sky. In Christianity, Sufism had to disappear due to too many rituals. Christianity killed Jesus. The Jews couldn't kill him. They crucified him, of course, but they couldn't kill him. He survived the crucifixion. Where the Jews failed, the Christians triumphed. They killed him without any crucifixion. They killed him through dogma and Vatican bureaucracy. Followers succeed where enemies fail. Every dogma is always afraid because Sufism means infinite freedom, without confinements and without limitations. It is more like love and less like a logical syllogism. It is more poetry than prose. It is blessedly irrational. A Sufi means a human being at heart, who does not worry about where this universe comes from, who does not worry about who created it, who doesn't worry where it is going. He doesn't ask questions, but on the contrary, begins to live intensely. Existence is there. Only fools care to know where it comes from. Poetry. When you penetrate the mystery of life, it is not that you are an observer. You become one with life. It is not that you swim in the river. It is not that you float in the river. It is not that you fight to enter the river. No, you become the river. Suddenly, you realize that the wave is part of the river, and that the river is part of the wave. It's not just that we are part of God. God is always part of us. Sufism is not thinking about existence. It is being existence. It's not thinking. It's not doing something about existing. It's neither thought nor action. It is being. When Al-Hala stated, I am God, they killed him for being a blasphemer. And he said aloud to heaven, in quotes, you cannot deceive me. I even see you in these executioners. You are here in these killers, and in whatever form you come, my God, I will know you because I have known you. Sufis sing. They do not give sermons because life is more like a song and less like a sermon. And they dance. And they don't talk about dogmas because a dance is more alive, more similar to existence, more similar to the birds that sing in the trees and to the wind that passes through the pines, more like a waterfall or clouds raining or grass growing. All life is dance, vibrant, pulsating of infinite life. Love is the most dangerous thing in the world. Every culture, every civilization, every so-called religion separates each child from his heart. It is something very dangerous. Everything that is dangerous comes from the heart. The mind is safer, and with the mind you know where you are. With the heart, no one ever knows where it is. With the mind, everything is calculated, mapped, and measured. Death and resurrection. Sufism is death and resurrection. The moment you start falling towards the heart, it is like falling into the abyss. The head sees it as a fall, and there is a lot of fear. When you start to fall towards the heart, you are left alone. Now you won't know where you are going because there is no one there and there are no landmarks. In fact, there is no concrete solid path. The heart is not mapped, not measured, not explored. There will be tremendous fear. No one can be reborn before dying. So the message of all spiritual traditions is the art of dying. If your ego dies, you will be available to infinite sources of life. The whole effort is how to break these stone walls. And they are not made of stone, they are made of thoughts. But nothing is more like a rock than a thought. They are made of dogmas, scriptures, and wherever you go, you carry them with you. You carry your prison with you. The fall of the walls will seem like death to you. In a way, it is, because you will lose your current identity. Suddenly, there is something else. It was always hidden inside you, but you were not aware of it. Suddenly, a discontinuity. The old is no longer there, and something completely new has entered. It is not continuous with your past. And if you look back, you will not feel everything that existed before this resurrection was real. No, it will seem as if you had seen it in a dream, or it will seem as if you read it somewhere in fiction, or as if someone else were telling his own story and it was never yours, but someone else. The old disappears completely. That's why we call it the death of the ego. An absolutely new phenomenon arises. It is not a modified form of the old. It has no connection with the old. It is a resurrection. But resurrection is only possible when you are able to die to the old. Definition. The mystical path of abandonment to the will of God is characterized by a total trusting and trusting surrender to divine providence, following a path marked by the acceptance of divine designs at every moment. This path involves a renunciation of the active search for God in conventional methods, such as books or discussions, and focuses on a continuous adherence to the divine will, manifested in daily duties and the situations that arise. Surrender to divine will manifests itself in accepting the present moment as the only rule, leaving behind past methods and trusting in direct divine guidance every step of the way. This process of abandonment implies a deep trust in providence, a constant adherence to love and duties, and a perseverance in inner peace despite the circumstances. On this path, the divine presence is experienced in everyday life, receiving divine eternity in the midst of temporal vicissitudes. Abandonment to the will of God manifests itself as an act of total surrender, where the personal will merges with the divine, following the example of Jesus in his full acceptance of the cross and his absolute trust in the Father. Islam. Surrender to the will of Allah in the Muslim tradition is an act of total surrender to divine providence, characterized by absolute trust in the Creator's designs and by full acceptance of his will at every moment. Al-Ghazali described 3 degrees of abandonment. The first implies trust in the guarantee of providence of God Almighty, similar to the abandonment of a small child with respect to his mother. The third degree, the highest, consists of being in the hands of the Most High God both in action and in repose, like the corpse in the hands of the washer of the dead. And in this state, the human being sees himself as dead, moved by eternal power, which reinforces his certainty that he doesn't come to move, to be able, to want, to know, except by an absolute decree of God. Misunderstanding. Abandonment doesn't mean laziness or surrender to evil, but only surrendering control of your body, mind, and soul to the divine will to achieve supreme realization. This implies a certain sacrifice, but it also implies liberation because the Father's will does not always coincide with your own capricious will, but it leads to your highest good. In my opinion, the path of control is a nightmare, and the path of control over others is even worse because it requires great responsibility and karmic mistakes are paid for very dearly, very expensive. However, abandonment to divine control is relaxing and liberating because it frees you from the heavy burden of existence and leads you to paradise. It is not easy to achieve because it requires constant concentration and meditation to the Supreme Spirit, to whom we constantly offer our lives. But once it is obtained, the energy and frequency increases so much that you no longer have to make an effort, but rather let yourself be guided by God until achieving enlightenment. If your body bothers you, give control of your body to the spirit, and the discomfort will disappear. If your mind disturbs you, give the spirit control of your mind, and you will find peace. If your soul wants material things, give the spirit control of your soul, and it will give you what you need at every moment and what is best for you, for your spiritual evolution. The golden path of surrender does not at all mean the path of laziness, because each person must fulfill their work of family responsibilities. But it means the release of a burden so that life can flow much more easily. Opposing the will of a spirit is like trying to stop a river that flows on its own. However incomparable the supreme truth may be, I promise to attain it. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.